Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the untamed, unwashed, and wildly overrated world of the Wild West. No John Wayne heroics. No Ennio Morricone soundtrack. Just you. Waking up with a backache in a stranger's hayloft, blinking into the dusty light and realizing you might not make it to sundown. Your mouth is dry. Not because you're nervous, though you should be, but because you've just inhaled 3 fistfuls of hay dust. And what's that something scurrying mice or something worse? You cough, then gag. The scent of horse sweat and yesterday's beans is doing things to your stomach you didn't think were possible this early. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. Because misery loves company. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You try to sit up, hitting your head on a support beam. The hayloft creaks ominously under you. Below, someone's arguing in what sounds like English, but has enough missing teeth to require subtitles. Through the slats in the wall, morning light slants across a tired town, a single main street, a general store that may or may not sell actual food, and a saloon that doubles as a town hall dentist and fight club. You don't know the name of the town. You don't know the name of the person whose barn you're in. And judging by the ominous squeaking of the floorboards and the heavy boots climbing the ladder behind you, they've just found out you're here. You grab your boots. Well, someone's boots. A size too small and caked with something you choose to believe is mud. You lurch toward the ladder, trying to remember if you actually have any coins or if your pockets are just full of lint and misplaced optimism. Downstairs, a man in suspenders and a look that says, "I shoot before I ask," stands, arms folded. He points to your feet, then the door. You try a smile. He tries cocking his rifle. You're out the door before he can say trespassing. You hit the dirt road literally because, of course, there's a ditch and crawl upright as chickens scatter in protest. You take your first real breath of Wild West morning air, dry, smoky, and tinged with regret. In the distance, a bell rings. Maybe it's church. Maybe it's a warning. Either way, your day has officially begun. Historians still argue whether these frontier towns truly lived up to their lawless reputations, or if dime novels just cranked up the drama. What they don't debate it was no place for amateurs. And you're very much an amateur. A random child throws a rock at you and screams, "Thief!" You look around. Did you steal something? Technically the boots. Also the sleep in that barn. Okay, yes, you are a thief. You make your way down the street trying to look like you belong. You nod at a man tying a horse to a hitching post. He spits at your boots. Not a word, just pure spitty judgment. You duck into the alley. You're not hiding. You're scouting. You find a cracked mirror leaning against a rain barrel and catch a glimpse of yourself wind-blown, bleary-eyed, and sunburnt from yesterday. One eyebrow is singed. When did that happen? A poster on the wall catches your eye. Wanted dangerous outlaw, $500 reward. The drawing looks suspiciously like you. Same nose, same "I didn't sleep well" face. Someone has drawn a mustache on it, but otherwise it's uncomfortably accurate. Is that your first bounty poster? Milestone? Shame. It's based on mistaken identity. At least, you hope it is. Fringe records from the time suggest that wanted posters were sometimes based on verbal descriptions, alone meaning a whole lot of innocent drifters got mistaken for hardened criminals. If this is one of those cases, you've got about an hour before someone recognizes you. You back away from the poster, carefully. Then you realize you still haven't eaten. Your stomach stages a protest, a loud one. A bell rings again. Not church, not a warning. It's breakfast time at the saloon. And your best chance at food is inside that big, swinging-doored box of regrets and gunpowder. You straighten your shirt, which is actually not your shirt now that you think about it. You push open the doors. Inside, cigar smoke, half-finished poker games, and someone snoring on a table. The bartender eyes you. His apron is older than your entire existence. He gestures to the corner. "Breakfast is 2 cents, he says flatly. You check your pockets. Lint, optimism, a bent nail. You show him your coinless palms. He looks at your boots again. You swallow hard. Those boots are your only defense against snakebite, cactus thorns, and public humiliation. But the beans smell good. Really good. Welcome to your first deal in the Wild West. Spoiler, you don't win. You hand over the boots. They hit the bar top with a thud and a little puff of dust. The bartender doesn't blink. He just tilts his head toward the corner where an old man is spooning beans into his face, like he's trying to dig to China through his own throat. You hobble over barefoot each step, sending tiny, sharp messages from the wooden floor to your underdeveloped 21st century arches. You sit. The bench creaks like it might file a complaint. A tin plate lands in front of you. Beans. Maybe some mystery meat. Possibly possum. Or rat. You don't ask. You eat. You've never been so thankful for overcooked legumes in your life. You try to chew quietly, but the beans keep betraying you with little squeaky farts of steam. The bartender shouts something in your direction. You nod politely. Turns out he's not talking to you. He's talking about you. Heard there's a new ranch hand in town, he says. Heads turn. The old man stops spooning. You smile with beans in your teeth. Yep, that's me. It's not. But you've learned something already. Identity is fluid in the Wild West, and survival depends on playing the part. The man to your left grunts. Boss will be needing you out at the Dawson spread. North Fork? Better get going. Sun's high already. You nod again like someone who knows where the Dawson spread is. Like someone who knows what a spread is. You do not. You stand up, forgetting you no longer have boots. Splinters remind you. As you limp out of the saloon, a breeze kicks up the dust. You squint against it. Somewhere north is a ranch you don't work for, run by a man you've never met, filled with cows or horses or something else that kicks. Historians still argue whether the transient workers of the Wild West cowboys, drifters, and claim jumpers actually held any sense of loyalty, or if they just wandered from paycheck to paycheck like tumbleweeds with hats. What's certain, most people did not last long. You walk. Your feet ache. You step on something sharp, maybe a nail, maybe a cursed thorn. You limp harder. You're passed by a boy on a donkey. He smirks as he goes. The donkey smirks too. Up ahead, a sign nailed to a tree. Dawson Ranch. 3 miles. You sigh. This is the part where you realize you have no water, no hat, and your skin is already cooking. And the funny thing about the desert sun, it's not funny. Your tongue starts to swell a little. That's fine. Normal. No one's died from dry mouth in under 30 minutes, right? A snake rattles from a rock nearby. You stop. You wait. The snake stares at you like you owe it money. Then it slithers away. One quirky tidbit, cowboys sometimes kept snakes as impromptu watchdogs, tossing them in their bedrolls at night to deter thieves. Whether that worked or just made sure no one stole their corpse is up for debate. You trudge onward. Each step a new adventure in pain. You think you hear music. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's your dehydrated brain staging a farewell party. Finally, you see a fence. A long, tired fence with a bored-looking horse tied up next to it. Beyond, a man in a wide-brimmed hat and a belt full of something shiny squints at you from under the brim. "New hand," he calls. You nod. He tosses you a shovel. "Ditch needs digging," he says, already walking away. You look at the shovel. It's heavier than you expected. The wood is splintered. Your palms are soft, uncalloused, not ready for this kind of commitment. But you walk to the ditch, and you dig. The ground is dry, like cement with attitude. You barely get an inch down before your shoulders scream. The man watches from the shade. You hear him spit. A hawk circles above. You wonder if it's measuring you for leftovers. Historians estimate that many ranch hands worked from sunup to sundown for $1 a day, often with no days off and less job security than a chicken in a poker game. You are already fantasizing about quitting. By the 3rd shovel load, you have blisters. By the 10th one has popped. By the 15th, you've invented 3 new curse words and a dance move called the shovel shuffle. You look up. The sun is directly overhead. How long have you been out here? A year? 2? No. It's only been an hour. The man walks over. "Suppose that's enough for now," he says. "Cattle need moving. Grab the pole." He points to a long, twisted stick with a hook at the end. You grab it. You are now a cattle herder. You approach the pen. Cows look at you with contempt. They know this isn't going to go well. You open the gate. The cows do not move. You wave the stick. One snorts. Another scratches itself on the fence. One pees. Not helpful. You try shouting. They ignore you. Finally, you wave the stick with desperation, channeling whatever cow whisperer energy you can fake. A cow moves. Then another. Then 3 bolt at once, and suddenly you're in the middle of a stampede at 0.25 mph. You run. Cows chase. You trip. Cows pass. You lie there in the dust, exhausted, bruised, your pride somewhere under a hoofprint. From the fence, the man shakes his head. "City folk," he mutters. You groan. The cow nearest you moos with what might be laughter. "Congratulations. You've survived your first half day in the Wild West." Barely. You wake up sore in places you didn't know existed. Your back, your shoulders, your pride. Turns out the ground out here isn't just dirt. It's nature's concrete slab warmed to a nice medium well by the sun. You must have passed out after the cow debacle because now it's late afternoon. Shadows are long and your tongue feels like it's wearing a wool sweater. Someone pokes you with a stick. You open your eyes to see a kid maybe 10 grinning like he just discovered a new kind of bug. "You dead?" he asks. You sit up slowly. "Not yet." "Shame," the kid says, disappointed before running off and whistling to no one in particular. You dust yourself off and rise to your feet like an elderly marionette. In the distance, the rancher is silhouetted against a glowing sky. He points you toward a shed. "Sleep there," he says. We start early. You stumble to the shed. It's barely a building. 3 walls and a roof that leaks the sound of mosquitoes buzzing like a drunken barbershop quartet. There's straw on the ground, a burlap sack that might count as a pillow, and the vague smell of moldy ham. Still, it's better than the dirt. You lie down, exhale, and immediately feel the sharp stab of a straw needle to the kidney. You shift. It stabs the other kidney. Perfect balance. Your stomach rumbles. You remember the beans, regret the beans. A rat scurries across a beam above you. You name him Gerald. You make a deal he stays up there and you won't throw the pillow. You close your eyes and try to sleep. But then the howling starts. Wolves, coyotes, screaming banshees from folklore. Historians still debate whether night predators were as prevalent near settlements as legends claim, or if pioneers exaggerated how often their sleep was interrupted by teeth. But here's what's not debated. Settlers were constantly on edge, thanks to nighttime sounds that carried too well across open plains. You sit up hugging your knees. Gerald watches you from the rafter judging. Eventually you doze off again, just in time to wake up to the sound of a bell. It's still dark. You stumble out of the shed into pre-dawn blue. The air is cold, way colder than expected. Your breath puffs out in little clouds. You feel like someone dunked your lungs in mint tea. Someone hands you a tin mug of something hot. You sip. It's coffee in the sense that it's hot and brown and smells vaguely like old boots. You try not to taste it. You just let it pass through you like a ghost of caffeine. The rancher gives you a nod. Time to ride. You panic a little. You don't know how to ride. You say nothing. You are handed reins. A horse snorts, and eyes you like it already knows your deepest secrets and resents them. You mount. Kind of. More like you get one leg over and then flop on like a sack of terrified flour. The horse sighs. You both begin to understand that this will not go well. And then you're off. Bouncing, lurching, wishing you had a seatbelt and several painkillers. The sun rises behind you as the land opens up. Golden fields stretch out ahead, and somewhere out there is a bunch of cattle that need moving. You ride with 3 other men. None of them talk much. One chews something. Might be tobacco. Might be jerky. Might be actual leather. You don't ask. The quiet is nice. Until it's broken by gunfire. 3 shots. Close. You duck. The horse doesn't care. Just target practice, one of the men says. You nod as if that makes it better. Gunfire was common in the Old West, not always from outlaws, but from neighbors testing rifles aboard ranch hands, or anyone with a bad temper and access to ammunition. Accidental shootings weren't rare, and many folks buried on the frontier had their names misspelled or unrecorded altogether because there wasn't time to ask questions. You pass an old tree with initials carved into it. Some date back decades. Some seem fresh. One simply reads, "Not worth it." A buzzard circles above. You're not superstitious, but you do wonder if the bird knows something you don't. Eventually, the herd comes into view. It's bigger than expected. Dozens of cattle all chewing and staring like judgmental grandmothers. You're told to help circle them up and get them moving. Just flap your arms, one guy says. You do. The cows ignore you. You try yelling. One of them turns, snorts, and walks directly at you. You freeze. This is how you die. Trampled by beef. But then the horse you're riding shifts, blocking the cow's path. It works. Somehow, it works. The cow turns and joins the others. You exhale. You might be getting the hang of this. Maybe. You spend the next 2 hours nudging, coaxing, shouting, occasionally flailing at the herd. Your throat goes dry. Your back starts to protest again. But it works. The cows move. The men nod at you, the faintest sign of respect. You grin. And that's when you see it off in the distance. A dust cloud. Riders. Fast, not friendly. You point. The men squint. Rustlers, one mutters. Your mouth goes dry again. Not from the dust this time, it's dread. One man tosses you a rifle. Don't shoot your foot. You barely catch it. It's heavy. Cold. You've never held a real one. You ride faster now, trying to get ahead of the herd, heart pounding like a drum solo. The cattle panic, sensing something wrong. The men shout. And for the first time since you woke up, you don't think about your blisters or Gerald or the terrible coffee. You think this was supposed to be boring history. You think, why did I click on this video? You think I'm definitely not making it to Sundown. Your hands are shaking, but you grip the rifle anyway. The herd is panicking now. Massive snorting animals pushing against each other like bumper cars made of muscle and bone. Dust kicks up thick around you. Your horse dances sideways, nervous, sensing your fear. The rustlers are closing in. 4 riders, maybe 5, wearing hats pulled low and bandanas across their faces. Classic, almost theatrical. You half expect a spaghetti western soundtrack to kick in, but there's no music. Just the thunder of hooves and the low rising hum of adrenaline in your ears. You fumble with the rifle. It's heavy and awkward, and you're not entirely sure which part is the safety. You remember someone once told you never to point it at anything you didn't intend to shoot, which right now includes literally everything within eyesight. A shot rings out this time, not practice. Real, loud, close. You don't know who fired it. You just know that your horse startles and bolts, launching you forward like a sack of produce. You cling to the saddle horn knuckles, white, trying not to scream. You manage to hang on. Barely. You glance behind you. 2 rustlers are peeling off, trying to flank the herd. One of the ranch hands yells, waving his hat, trying to cut them off. You think about helping. Then you think about how you don't actually know how to fire the rifle without potentially shooting yourself, your horse, or Gerald the rat back in the shed. So you ride. You try to keep the herd from scattering entirely. You wave your arms. You shout hoarsely. One of the cows gives you a look of deep judgment, but moves anyway. Then you hear it a whoop, sharp and strange. One of the rustlers, closer now. He's grinning, pistol in hand, maybe hoping the show of force alone will do the trick. Historians still argue whether rustling in the Old West was primarily a crime of desperation or opportunity. Some say most rustlers were down on their luck cowboys trying to survive. Others claim it was organized crime with elaborate branding forgeries and bribed sheriffs. Either way, the danger was real. You stare at the pistol. The rancher beside you raises his rifle and fires once clean and loud, controlled. The rustler's horse veers, spooked, and they retreat, disappearing in the rising dust. Just like that, the threat ebbs. You're alive. You're also shaking like a leaf. No one says anything. One of the men spits in the dirt. The rancher gives you a half nod. That's high praise in cowboy. Get the herd moving, someone mutters. And you do. Because what else is there? An hour later, the cattle are calm again, plodding toward their grazing pasture. The sky is turning that hot midday white, and you're sweating through clothes you didn't think could hold this much moisture. You finally dismount. You regret it instantly. Your legs feel like jelly, and every bone in your body files a formal complaint. You limp toward the chuck wagon, basically a rolling kitchen on wheels, and are handed a plate of what might generously be called food. Beans. Again. Some kind of biscuit. Possibly made from stone dust and regret. You eat anyway. You're too tired to care. Around you, the men settle into shade, chewing quietly, dust caking their boots and eyebrows. One guy starts humming a tune, slow, sad, probably learned from his grandfather, who learned it from a ghost. You ask, is it always like this? Nope, he says. Sometimes it's worse. You laugh. It sounds slightly hysterical. Later, you're sent to fetch water, which sounds simple until you realize the well is about half a mile away, and the bucket you're given has a hole, not big enough to empty it entirely, just enough to make the return trip a soggy race against time. The path is dusty. The sun is brutal. Your lips are dry. You think longingly of ice cubes, of air conditioning, of a time when you didn't feel like a reheated tortilla left out in the sun. At the well, you crank the rope and the bucket descends. You hear the satisfying splash, then the grinding lift of wood against rope as you bring it back up. The water smells slightly metallic. It's warm, but it's water. You drink half before remembering you're supposed to bring it back. Oops. You refill. Start walking. The hole drips steadily, leaving a Hansel and Gretel trail of dampness through the dust. Back at camp, you're met with a grunt of approval. You've done something right. Kind of. You sit down finally, letting your spine curve into a shape more reminiscent of a question mark. Your face is red. Your arms are scratched. You're sticky in places you didn't know could be sticky. And it's not even 3 p.m. You realize now why people looked older back then. Life just wore them down faster. Sun, dust, bad food, worse water, and every so often someone trying to shoot your cow. But somehow there's peace in the silence. The wind whistles through dry grass. A hawk cries above, cutting circles into the sky. Gerald is nowhere to be seen, probably catching up on his own survival story. You take a deep breath and wonder how people did this for years. Not days, not weeks, years. And then, like some cruel joke from the universe, someone yells, "Time to move 'em again." You stand, muscles groaning, and you ride. Because that's what's expected. Because quitting isn't really an option out here. Because whether you like it or not, you're living the history you thought would put you to sleep. You ride into the next stretch of prairie like a baked potato wrapped in denim. The sun's higher now, no longer merely hot, but confidently inferno. Your hat feels like it's doing the bare minimum. Sweat trickles down your back, pooling somewhere entirely impolite. The air smells like horse leather and cooked dirt. You try to focus on the horizon where a scatter of dark specks signals the ranch's windmill and outbuildings. Your goal? Your finish line. Just only 5 more hours to go. Welcome to the afternoon shift. If morning was for survival, afternoon is for pure stamina. Everything slows down. The cattle move like molasses in January. You can't blame them. With every step, their hooves kick up dust that clings to your throat like dry oatmeal. You stop bothering to cough it out. It's just part of your body now. Your horse is sweating as much as you. You pat its neck, partly for comfort, partly to assure it that you're both equally miserable. Still, the rhythm of the herd continues. The dust forms a permanent halo around the drive. You try not to think about your skin turning to leather. In the Wild West, sun protection wasn't exactly a priority. Historians still argue whether cowboys suffered more from heat stroke or malnutrition. Either way, long sleeves, wide hats, and constant squinting were the only SPF most people ever had. You adjust your scarf. It's soaked. You don't care. Every so often you pass something strange in the brush. A broken wagon wheel. A rattlesnake skin. Once the skeleton of what might have been a deer, sun-bleached and weirdly serene. That's when it really hits you. This place is a graveyard in slow motion. It's beautiful, but it doesn't care about you. You're a guest. A vulnerable, sweaty guest. The cattle keep trudging. You check your canteen, 3 sips left. You ration them like gold. Then someone yells, "Stampede." Oh no. You whip your head around just in time to see 3 steers break formation and start bolting. Not fast, not wild, but panicked enough to inspire the others. And the others are definitely inspired. Suddenly it's chaos. Dust surges up like smoke. The ground rumbles. It's like watching a tsunami made of meat. You panic. You're allowed. Your horse jerks sideways, trying to decide between bravery and self-preservation. You hold on barely and try to guide it toward the edge of the chaos. The noise is deafening hooves, pounding cattle, bellowing men shouting. You swear the sky itself vibrates. A stampede sounds exciting in movies. In real life, it's a nightmare. Historically, stampedes killed more cowboys than gunfights. Some cowhands slept in their saddles ready to leap up at the first rumble. Others carried pans they'd banged together to break the herd's focus. Most just prayed. You do all 3. You manage to swing wide, giving the animals space. Someone, a seasoned rider with nerves of steel, gallops past, yelling and waving, steering the herd from disaster. Gradually, it slows. The stampede becomes a stagger. The panic recedes. No one's dead. Miraculously, you exhale so hard you see stars. You dismount, knees wobble. You sit down in the dust, completely done. You'd give up your phone, your dignity, your entire snack drawer back home for a bath and a chair with a back. Instead, you get beans again, and dry bread, and a sip of lukewarm water that somehow makes you thirstier. There's a kind of camaraderie in the suffering now. The other ranch hands nod at you like you passed a silent test. No one's laughing at your pale skin or trembling hands. You rode through a stampede and didn't fall off. That counts. You lean against the chuck wagon looking at the horizon. A hawk drifts past. You envy its detachment. Someone hands you a tin cup of coffee. It tastes like burnt wood and ancient sins. You drink it anyway. Later, as the sun droops toward the west, you're tasked with gate duty. This means standing in place blessedly off the horse and keeping the cattle from wandering into a ravine while the others guide them through a narrow pass. It sounds boring. You've never been more grateful. You stare at the same 3 shrubs for half an hour. A tumbleweed rolls by like a polite ghost. You wave. Your shadow grows long, stretching across the dirt like a black ribbon. The sun paints the landscape in golds and reds. Everything is dust and light. It's strangely beautiful, like the day is apologizing for being such a jerk earlier. A coyote barks in the distance. You remember reading somewhere that coyotes were both pests and spiritual omens in native folklore. Mischievous, clever, lonely, you relate. By now your boots are caked in dirt. Your socks are an archaeological mystery. You can't feel your shoulders. You've learned that denim can in fact chafe, and you still have to help build a fire when the sun goes down. But for now the herd is moving again. You open the gate, wave them through, and tip your hat like you've been doing this your whole life. You haven't. But you survived today. You wake up stiff with the taste of campfire ash and regret on your tongue. The ground was not kind to you. Neither was the cold. Out here, the temperature swings harder than a saloon piano player during a duel. 1 minute, you're sweating in your boots. The next, your toes are whispering secrets to frostbite. Welcome to morning 2. You've made it farther than most tourists would. You stretch gently, cautiously, like your body is trying to renegotiate the contract it signed yesterday. Muscles you didn't know existed file complaints. Your shoulders feel like 2 sacks of gravel tied together with frayed rope. You roll out of your blanket, still clutching your hat, like it might run off without you, and immediately step in something wet. Coffee. It's coffee. Spilled. You almost cry. Breakfast is the same beans as yesterday, reheated over embers. You try to pretend it's gourmet. Rustic fusion, you mutter. Someone snorts. A voice calls, "You're on latrine duty." And that, dear listener, is how your glamorous cowboy fantasy ends. Yes, latrines. Not quite the shootouts and spurs you imagined, huh? In the Wild West, sanitation was, let's be generous and say in progress. Historians still argue whether more settlers died from bullets or bacteria. Typhoid, dysentery, and plain old ugh were the real outlaws. Your job is simple: dig a fresh pit, make it look respectable, and try not to gag. You trudge off with a shovel and a heavy soul. The dirt's harder than it looks, full of rocks, roots, and existential despair. You're sweating before the first foot, and every breeze carries reminders of previous efforts. Still, there's something oddly meditative about it. You're doing your part, keeping camp from turning into a biohazard. It's noble. Kind of. Eventually someone relieves you. you almost weep with gratitude. You're promoted to firewood detail. Now you get to hike into the woods alone and gather dry branches like some kind of 1800s grocery run. You're warned to watch for snakes, cougars, and the occasional grumpy bear. So that's comforting. The trees are quiet. Too quiet. Every crackle of twigs underfoot sounds like doom. But gradually, the solitude becomes soothing. Birds chirp. A deer darts past. For a moment, you forget the blisters. You find some good branches, bundle them up, and start the hike back. Then you hear it. Rustling. Not your rustling. You freeze. It could be anything. A coyote, a cow, a ranch hand looking for a break, or worst case, a bandit. Let's be clear, outlaws were not romantic. They were desperate, dirty, and often violently unhinged. And they weren't always strangers. Sometimes they were just neighbors who needed your boots more than your friendship. You tighten your grip on the wood bundle. Totally ineffective, but symbolically satisfying. The rustling stops. You walk faster. Back at camp, no one noticed you were gone longer than expected. You drop the wood with a flourish, like you just saved the world. Someone tosses you a biscuit. It's hard enough to deflect bullets, but it's warm. You chew slowly, savoring the few crumbs of joy the day allows. After breakfast, you help repair a broken fence post. This involves hammering splintery wood into sun-baked earth, using tools that seem personally offended by your existence. Every time you swing the mallet, your entire spine protests. Your palms develop new blisters over yesterday's blisters. You learn to curse creatively internally, of course. A nearby ranch hand gives you a tip talk to the fence. Makes it go faster. You try it. Please don't break again, you whisper. It snaps anyway. Figures? Fences were life or death on the range. Keeping cattle in or rustlers out meant the difference between profit and starvation. Barbed wire was revolutionary. It also sliced through skin like a hot knife through dignity. Cowboys kept vinegar on hand to treat the wounds. You mentally add that to your never try this again list. Around noon, you're granted a half-hour break. You sit under the wagon hat over your face, pretending to nap. Flies use you as a landing strip. Your arms feel sunburnt. Your mouth tastes like dust. And still, you'd rather be here than doing another Zoom meeting. Somewhere nearby, someone plays a harmonica. It's wildly out of tune. You love it. You think about the people who did this for years, not hours. Immigrants, freed slaves, orphans, women disguised as men, people with nowhere else to go and everything to prove. Historians still argue whether cowboy life was romanticized by Hollywood or just misunderstood by time. Probably both. You open one eye. The sky's so blue it looks fake. A hawk circles lazily overhead, like it's judging your work ethic. Fair. When break's over, you get roped into helping herd a few strays back into formation. This time it's just walking. No stampedes, no drama. Just you, a stick, and some very opinionated cows. One keeps trying to lick your sleeve. Another farts directly in your path. It's the little things. The sun starts dipping again, casting long gold shadows over the prairie. You're sore, dusty, and delirious. But you're still upright. Sort of. Back at camp, dinner smells slightly better tonight. Someone added herbs. Or maybe it's just pine needles. You don't care. You eat like a person possessed. By the time night falls, you're already half asleep. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. But for now, you're just glad you didn't step in anything worse than coffee. You wake up before the sun. Not because you're eager, but because a rooster screams directly into your soul. You weren't aware there was a rooster in camp. Surprise. Your back aches in new creative patterns. Your nose is inexplicably sunburnt. And your right boot is missing. You find it in a bush. Someone thought it was funny. You do not laugh. Today begins with a trail ride. The cattle need to move. Again. Because cattle, you're told, are nature's least cooperative invention. You mount up barely. Your thighs are a slow-motion scream. The horse gives you a look like, not this clown again. You ride anyway. The herd is restless. Dust clouds bloom under every hoof. The sun rises, turning the sky into a watercolor fire. It would be breathtaking if not for the smell. You're not sure what it is exactly. Part cow, part sweat, part mystery. But it's bold, confident, and all-consuming. Ode to West. After a few miles, the rhythm sets in. Step, jangle, grunt. You almost feel like a real cowboy. Until your horse stops cold. You nudge. Nothing. You cluck. Still nothing. Someone rides by and says, "Talk sweet," or threaten it. You whisper sweet nothings. You offer a promotion. The horse flicks an ear but does not move. You finally dismount and walk beside it like a disgraced valet. Sometimes the Old West humbles you in the pettiest ways. Eventually, the herd reaches a shallow stream. You're told to help guide them across, which sounds easy until the first cow flatly refuses. You try shouting, then coaxing, then waving your hat. She stands there like a stone idol. Another cow shoves past her, and the first follows. Because, of course, cattle psychology is its own kind of dark magic. The crossing goes okay, until a calf panics and veers downstream. You somehow are the closest. And so you run, splashing through the water boots, sucking mud hat flying off like a fleeing bird. You catch the calf's lead rope and pull it gently back to the main group, drenched and triumphant. No one sees it. No one applauds. The foreman grunts. Took you long enough. You begin composing revenge ballads in your head. Lunch is a sad sandwich and a warm canteen. You eat under a juniper bush and wonder what your dentist would say if he saw you now. Probably something like flossing's the least of your problems. As the herd settles again, you're given lookout duty. You sit on a ridge, binoculars in hand, pretending you know what danger looks like. Here's what you do see: a fox trying to rob a squirrel, a vulture circling suspiciously close, two distant riders who may or may not be real. The Wild West was never truly empty. Native tribes still crossed these lands. Soldiers, scouts, and settlers wandered in loose orbits. And yes, outlaws too, some real, some imagined. Historians still argue whether the wildness was exaggerated for dime novels or a brutal truth downplayed for comfort. You sit a little straighter, just in case. By late afternoon, the clouds gather. Someone mutters storm's comin'. They're always right. You help rig tarps over the wagons, tighten saddle straps, and check supplies. Rain here doesn't play. It turns dirt to syrup, wind to blade. The sky darkens. Thunder grumbles. Your rain slicker is mostly holes and wishful thinking. Then boom, the heavens open. It pours. Sideways. Merciless. You huddle under the wagon with 3 others and a very confused chicken. The storm slaps the world like it owes money. You are soaked to the bone and beyond. Someone tries to tell a joke, but no one hears it over the thunder. You just sit and wait. And drip. Eventually, the worst passes. The rain fades to mist. Steam rises from the earth like ghosts stretching their legs. You emerge blinking like cave dwellers. Everything is mud. Everything is squish. Dinner is postponed. Fires are waterlogged. You chew jerky and pretend it's steak. You've earned every wrinkle on your face tonight. And still, somehow, you feel kind of proud. This isn't Instagram cowboying. This is survival. Wet, cranky, communal survival. You help retie a tarp. You offer your extra blanket to the kid whose gear got soaked. You nod at the horse that finally moved for you earlier. Tiny victories. The moon peeks out between clouds, a soft silver blessing on your soggy camp. You crawl into your damp bedroll and sigh. No one said the West was easy. But against all odds, you're still here. Barely. Morning comes again, and it's personal. The sun slaps your eyelids like it holds a grudge. Birds scream. The rooster from yesterday appears to have brought friends. You sit up, muscles staging a silent protest. Your bedroll is damp in new places. Somewhere in the night, your blanket found a puddle and made it home. You stand like an ancient marionette. Every joint clicks. Your spine negotiates terms of surrender. Today you're told you'll be helping with branding. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds painful. It is. You begin with herding calves into a makeshift pen. Easy right, except calves are rubbery demons. They zig when you zag. They leap like deer on espresso. One manages to kick your shin with the precision of a medieval assassin. Then comes the actual branding. A fire pit is set. Branding irons placed in. You're handed gloves. Heavy, stiff, and coated in old grime. Your job hold the calf steady while the brand goes on. No one tells you how strong a terrified calf can be. They twist like possessed spaghetti. You and two others wrestle one down. Then the hiss. The smell of singed hair. The calf bleats like you've just insulted its ancestors. You feel awful, but the rancher pats your back. Good job. Quick and clean. You're not sure you want to be good at this. Branding's necessary, they say. Livestock theft was rampant in the Wild West. A clear brand meant ownership, and sometimes meant survival. Historians still argue whether branding was more about deterrence or pure control. You think it was probably both. You do 5 more calves. By number 6, you stop flinching at the sizzle. You don't like that. Lunch is a quiet affair. People chew, spit, and squint. You're starting to blend in. After lunch, fence duty. Turns out cows are escape artists. They find gaps, and then they use them. Your job is to fix what they break. You walk a long stretch of fence with a local ranch hand named Eli. He's 70 if he's a day wears a hat older than you and carries himself like a retired knife. He teaches you how to twist wire taut, how to wedge posts into rocky ground, how to ignore cactus needles in your pants. You ask how long he's been doing this. He shrugs. Long enough to forget why. You like him. The work is honest and weirdly satisfying. The fence starts to take shape. A line against chaos. Until a dust devil appears. At first you think it's a trick of the light. But no, it's a real one. A swirling column of dirt and leaves and confusion. It charges down the hill like it has plans. Eli just mutters, "Here we go." The devil hits your section of fence and explodes into a tornado of cow poop and disappointment. You both stand there blinking. Eli sighs. Well, guess that one wasn't meant to be. You start over. By sunset, you're back at camp. Your hands are raw. Your clothes are a patchwork of mud dust and what might be calf tears. You smell like effort and defeat. Dinner is chilly. Thick, spicy, and unapologetic. Someone tells a ghost story. Someone else plays a harmonica badly. You watch the stars emerge like tiny holes poked in a velvet sky. The Wild West is many things. Cruel, loud, relentless, but it is also vast. Quiet when it wants to be. There's a peace in exhaustion, a kind of sleepiness earned, not given. You crawl into your bedroll and don't even care that it's still damp. Your last thought before sleep, at least no more dust devils. The universe hears you, laughs. Sleep doesn't last long. At around midnight, something shuffles near your bedroll. You crack one eye open. A raccoon, wearing the face of Satan. Its eyes gleam like polished buttons. It's rifling through your saddlebag like it owns stock in jerky. You hiss at it. It hisses back, then pees on your boot and leaves. Welcome to nature's after-hours entertainment. By morning, your dignity's dried out, but your boots haven't. The smell is powerful. The cowhands laugh. One offers you a spare set. It's 3 sizes too big and one side's missing a sole. You wear them anyway. Because today is mail day. Sounds relaxing and correct. You're tasked with riding to the nearest postal relay to deliver a leather pouch full of messages, ranch orders, payments, letters home. The nearest post station 20 miles across open country. You mount a horse named Gumption. He's built like a barrel and smells like old leather and poor decisions. The trail is nothing but dust and silence, except for the crows. They caw with judgment. At first, it's almost peaceful. The wind hums in your ears. The sun is just warm enough to feel friendly. Then the snake happens. You spot it too late. Gumption does not enjoy snakes. One moment you're riding proud. The next, you're airborne, briefly majestic before belly flopping into a cactus patch like a human pancake. You lay there, reflecting. The snake slithers away smugly. You limp back to Gumption, who stares like you've inconvenienced his day. You remount. Slowly. By noon, you reach the post shack. It's a one-room wooden cube with a door that groans like a haunted violin. Inside, one man, 2 dogs, a pot of something unnameable on the stove. He grunts hello and takes the pouch. You ask if there's any mail coming back. He hands you a bundle wrapped in twine. Watch out for rustlers, he adds, like he's talking about light rain. Rustlers. Right. Bandits who steal horses, cattle, and occasionally your sense of security. You start the return trip with a new alertness. Every shadow seems aggressive. Every bush a bandit in disguise. Historians still argue how widespread rustling truly was. Some say it was overblown in dime novels. Others cite town records showing entire herds disappearing in a night. You decide not to test the statistics. 2 hours in, you hear a sound behind you. Hoofbeats. Fast. You nudge Gumption off the trail and hide behind a stand of brush. 2 riders blaze past, faces covered in bandanas. One has a rifle slung low. They don't see you. You exhale only when the dust settles. Congratulations. You've just survived your first bandit near miss. Back at camp, your story earns a mix of awe and mockery. You should have waved, one guy says. Maybe they'd let you join. That night you stare at the stars again. They feel sharper somehow, like you're more aware of the sky's distance and your own smallness under it. Tomorrow you'll be doing something else exhausting, but for now you sleep and dream of snakes with mustaches. Daybreak hits your tent like a hammer. You're still stiff from yesterday's snake pancake impression, and the mail runs adrenaline. Today, you're on trail cook duty. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. The camp expects 3 meals a day and 0 complaints. No matter the weather, the equipment, or the meager supplies. You shuffle out, face half buried in a patchy beard you didn't know you had. The cook's setup is laughably minimal. A cast iron skillet with a warped handle, a battered coffee pot, and a handful of ingredients that smell suspiciously like regret. Your mission: turn these sad scraps into something edible. You start with coffee, hoping for a miracle. The water tastes like it was filtered through old boots. You light the fire using flint and steel. It's slow going. Smoke pours in your eyes. The horses neigh disapprovingly. Next, beans. You dump the can's contents into the skillet. Their mushy smell faintly like metal and somehow still undercooked. The other cowhands wander by, offering advice that's more about telling stories than actual help. Back in '74, I once cooked beans so good, they made a man cry, says old Joe. You suspect Joe cried because he ate his own cooking. As the fire sputters, you realize you're out of salt. No seasoning, no flavor, just the primal experience of chewing hot mush. Lunch is silent except for one man who belts out an off-key rendition of a folk song about a horse named Bessie. You stare at the sky, wondering how people did this day after day. Historians still argue whether frontier cooking was a matter of necessity or negligence. You think it's a little bit of both. Mid-afternoon brings your saving grace, a brief rain shower. It's not enough to douse the fire, but it cools the dust in your mood. You try making coffee again. This time it's drinkable. You pass around the cups. The camp clinks mugs in a tired but grateful toast. Dinner is more of the same hardtack and whatever jerky is left. But as the stars come out, you feel a strange camaraderie forming. The Wild West might chew you up during the day, but at night it offers these brief moments of quiet and connection. You crawl into your bedroll coffee, warming your belly. Maybe tomorrow's trail cooking won't be a disaster. Or maybe it will. Either way, you'll be here to see. The morning sun hits you like a wall of heat. Today you're tasked with horse wrangling. Sounds simple: gather the herd, keep them together, and guide them back to camp. Easy in theory. In practice, it's chaos. You wake up to the maddening sound of neighing, snorting, and hoofbeats. The horses have broken free overnight. Great. You scramble out, hair-tousled eyes squinting. The herd is scattered over a wide field, munching like they own the place. You whistle. Nothing. You wave your arms. A few horses glance your way, then go back to eating. You try chasing them. They bolt, then trot, then gallop in wild circles. One particularly stubborn steed, nicknamed Wildfire, turns and gives you a look that says, "You're not my boss." You're sweating out of breath and starting to question your life choices. A local ranch hand saunters over, leans on a fence post, and laughs. Wrangling's part skill, part magic. You don't have the magic. You try everything, clapping, yelling, snapping the reins. Eventually, you manage to coax half the herd back. The rest, they wander off into a nearby creek, splashing and causing a minor flood. You scramble to catch the stragglers before they soak the saddles. By late afternoon, the herd is mostly accounted for. But your boots are soaked, your shirt's plastered to your back, and your patience is gone. The other cowhands give you tips. Speak horse, one says. Or bribe them with apples. You don't have apples. Historians still debate whether wrangling was more art or brute force. You lean toward brute force. By sunset, you're dragging yourself back to camp, horse wrangling sore but victorious. You flop down beside the fire and vow to never underestimate a horse's stubbornness again. As the camp quiets, you think about tomorrow's challenge. Maybe it's easier to survive the bandits than a herd of rebellious horses. You wake to a dust storm brewing on the horizon. The sky turns a sickly orange, and the wind howls like a banshee. Today's survival means weathering nature's fury. The cowhands scramble, securing tents, tying down gear, and shouting over the rising wind. You join the chaos, fumbling with ropes and stakes. Dust bites at your eyes and fills your mouth. Visibility drops to a few feet. You hunker down in the tent, hoping it holds. Outside, the world becomes a swirling maelstrom of sand and grit. The horses whinny, nervously pacing in their enclosures. Minutes feel like hours. Your face stings. Every breath tastes like ash. Historians still debate how frequent and severe dust storms were on the frontier. Some claim they were rare, others say they shaped entire communities. By late afternoon, the storm weakens. The silence afterward is eerie. Camp is coated in a fine layer of dust. Everything looks like it's been dipped in flour. You and the others emerge blinking. A few tents are damaged, but nothing irreparable. You spend the evening cleaning gear and sharing stories of past storms. One old-timer swears he once saw a dust devil pick up a man's hat and carry it for miles. You smile, imagining the hat's airborne journey. As night falls, the stars reappear, twinkling with a newfound clarity. You lie back, grateful for the calm after the storm. Tomorrow promises new challenges, hopefully less dusty. The morning air feels crisp, but you know better than to trust it. Today is Gun Safety Day. You're handed a rusty revolver and a stern warning: don't shoot yourself. Great advice if you can manage it. You fumble with the heavy weapon, fumbling the cylinder and nearly firing into your boot. The instructor, a grizzled veteran with one eye and a crooked smile, watches with amusement. He lectures on the importance of aiming, reloading, and knowing when to shoot. The reality, most gunfights ended with more missed shots than hits, and a lot of people crying. You practice firing at tin cans and paper targets. Your shots scatter like confused bees. One of the cowhands calls out, "Hey, watch where you're pointing that thing." You mumble apologies, cheeks burning. The veterans swap tales of duels, ambushes, and the odd accidental discharge. Historians still argue whether the Wild West was as violent as legends say, or mostly exaggerated. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. By afternoon, you gain a little confidence, but your fingers ache from the heavy trigger pull. You ponder how many of these gunslingers survived more by luck than skill. As the sun dips low, you return the revolver and promise yourself to keep both hands and feet intact tomorrow. You wake to a pungent smell that clings to your clothes, yesterday's campfire mixed with something else. Today's challenge: personal hygiene. Not exactly glamorous in the Wild West. Water's scarce, and bathing often means dunking your head in a murky river while dodging curious fish. You try to wash your face with a damp rag, but the grit won't budge. A few cowhands grumble about smelling worse than a skunk in a mine shaft. You laugh, though it's half-hearted. You know you probably fit that description. Your teeth are coated with a layer of dust, and your hair sticks out in wild tufts. The latrine is a hole in the ground, a few yards from camp. Privacy, forget it. You hear conversations, laughter, and once a yelp from a startled horse. Historians still argue whether frontier folk had any standards of cleanliness at all. You suspect the answer is barely. You make do with a quick scrub using leftover soap you swiped from a trading post. The effort feels futile. By nightfall, you resign yourself to smelling like a combination of leather, sweat, and whatever the hell nature provides. Yet somehow it becomes part of the charm. You catch a whiff of yourself and grin. Maybe tomorrow you'll find a clean river, or maybe you won't. Either way, you'll survive to smell another day. The sun beats down mercilessly, and you're assigned the dreaded water-fetching task. Sounds simple: walk to the nearest well, fill your canteen, and return. But the Wild West well is no ordinary water source. You trudge miles across uneven terrain, dodging cacti and swatting at angry flies. At the well, you find a queue of dusty settlers, each more impatient than the last. The well itself is a rickety wooden structure, creaking ominously as you lower the bucket. You struggle with the rope, which threatens to snap, sending your precious water splashing to the ground. Finally, you haul up a full bucket, only to spill half while making your way back. You curse under your breath. Every drop counts. The other cowhands tease you for your clumsiness. Water's life, one says, shaking his head. Wasted and you're dead. You nod solemnly. Historians still debate whether water scarcity or bandit attacks were the bigger threat. From your experience today, water scarcity wins hands down. By sunset, you're parched but proud. You've made it back with just enough water to keep the camp alive and yourself hydrated. Tomorrow's another day with more challenges looming. You wonder if you'll ever get used to this relentless frontier life. The evening brings a new test, cattle branding. It sounds simple, mark your herd to claim ownership. In reality, it's a fiery, smoky ordeal. You watch as seasoned cowhands wrestle a calf to the ground. The calf squeals, hooves flailing. Your job. Hold the branding iron steady. The iron, heated to a glowing red, sizzles as it meets the animal's hide. The smell of burning hair fills the air. Your stomach twists. One misstep and you could burn yourself, or worse, the wrong cow. You nervously grip the iron, trying to steady your shaking hand. The calf struggles fiercely, kicking up dust and hay. You finally manage to brand a few calves, the distinct mark, a badge of ownership and survival. Historians still debate how humane branding was, with some arguing it was downright cruel. You don't blame the calves for trying to escape. After hours in the dusty corral, your exhausted skin sticky with sweat. You gain a newfound respect for the cowhand's skill and patience. Branding isn't just about property, it's about survival identity and the harsh reality of frontier life. You stumble back to camp, soot-smudged and weary. The firelight flickers as you collapse beside it, wondering what tomorrow will throw at you next. You wake to the sound of a raven's caw and the unmistakable smell of bacon frying over the campfire. Breakfast on the frontier is a test of patience and stomach. You sit down with a rough-hewn plate of hardtack and bacon strips that look like they've been through a furnace. The hardtack is like chewing on a piece of rock, but it's all you've got. You dunk it in coffee to soften it, grimacing at the bitter taste. Around you, cowhands wolf down their meals, slapping backs and swapping tall tales. One old-timer swears he once ate a rattlesnake stew that cured his cough. You doubt it, but nod anyway. Historians still argue how often frontier folk ate meat versus grains and foraged plants. You decide it probably depended on luck and how good the cook was. The meal may be rough, but the camaraderie is genuine. You savor the warmth of the fire and the rare comfort of sitting still. Tomorrow, you'll be on the move again. But for now, breakfast feels like a small victory in a hard life. The sun's high when you're tasked with horse grooming. You approach your assigned steed, a wiry, stubborn mare with a bad attitude and a coat covered in dust. Brushing her down feels like wrestling a cloud of dirt and flies. She shakes her head, flicks her tail, and occasionally snaps at your hand. You remember the cowboys saying, "You don't own a horse." You negotiate peace with it. You scrub, sweep, and try to calm her. Her warm breath fogs in the dry air. The mane is a tangle of knots and burrs. You work through it, sweat dripping down your neck. Historians still argue whether horses or humans suffered more in the Wild West. You suspect it was a close call. After what feels like hours, your mare looks cleaner, but she's no beauty queen. You mount her for a quick ride, feeling every bump and creak of the rugged trail. She's stubborn, but loyal. You smile, realizing that out here, trust is hard-earned. You pat her neck and whisper a promise we'll make it through this. Somehow. The sun dips low, and you ride back to camp. Tomorrow, more challenges await. But for now, there's a fragile peace between rider and horse. The day brings the dreaded gun maintenance lesson. You sit by the fire examining your rusty revolver with a mix of fascination and dread. Cleaning this old firearm is both essential and terrifying. One wrong move and you could shoot yourself, or worse. end up with a useless piece of metal in a shootout. You disassemble the parts, careful not to lose the tiniest screw. The smell of gunpowder lingers as you wipe down each piece with an oily rag. A veteran cowhand shares stories of shootouts where a clean gun meant life or death. Historians still argue whether frontier folk were better off packing pistols or relying on speed and wits. You hope it's the latter. Your hands are greasy, and your mind races with scenarios of ambushes and showdowns. The sun sets, and you stash your gun, praying you never have to use it. Still, you know the Wild West waits for no one. Better be ready. You're handed a bucket of tar and a brush for road repair duty. It's messy, sticky work that smells like burnt rubber and old tires. The trail is riddled with potholes threatening to wreck wagon wheels and slow the entire caravan. You brush hot tar into the cracks, trying not to fling any on your clothes. A fellow traveler warns that a good road can mean the difference between life and death. You nod, realizing that even the smallest tasks here have huge consequences. Historians still argue about how much infrastructure actually existed in the frontier. You doubt there was much beyond these makeshift fixes. By midday, you're coated in grime, your hands blackened and stiff. The sun beats down relentlessly, and you dream of cooler, cleaner places. But for now, the trail is all there is, and you're stuck fixing it one sticky patch at a time. You join a group tasked with foraging for food. Armed with a basket and a sharp eye, you step cautiously into the scrubby undergrowth. The Wild West isn't exactly a gourmet's paradise. You hunt for berries, roots, and anything edible. You pick at a patch of wild onions, only to nearly gag from the strong smell. A neighbor claims some mushrooms nearby are just fine and promptly regrets it. Historians still argue whether settlers were adept foragers or mostly reliant on supplies. You're leaning toward the latter after today's near poisoning. Your basket half full, you trudge back to camp proud but wary. Tomorrow you hope for a cooked meal. For now, survival means knowing which plants won't kill you. You laugh nervously and remind yourself this is the Wild West, not a five-star restaurant. Water hauling sounds simple until you lug heavy barrels under the blazing sun. You grasp the rough wooden handle muscles, straining with every step. The water sloshes dangerously, threatening to spill and waste precious resources. The camp depends on you to keep everyone hydrated. Dust clings to your skin and sweat stings your eyes. A fellow traveler jokes that water is worth more than gold out here. Historians still debate how settlers balanced water needs with harsh conditions. You realize every sip is a small victory in this unforgiving landscape. At last, you reach the well refill and trudge back. Your arms ache, but the satisfaction of helping your camp keeps you going. You wonder if this is what they mean by water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Out here, you learn to treasure every drop. Today, you're thrown into firewood, gathering a task deceptively simple, yet brutally exhausting. You trudge into the woods, axe in hand, hunting for dry logs. Every swing is heavy, your muscles screaming in protest. Branches snap underfoot, sending startled birds into the sky. You realize campfires aren't just about warmth. They're life-cooking food and warding off predators. Historians still argue how much wood settlers could sustainably gather without wrecking the land. You doubt they cared much back then. Your arms ache, but you manage to stack enough firewood to keep the fire burning through the night. The camp thanks you with tired smiles and a shared sense of survival. As you sit by the fire later, you savor the crackle and glow, a small comfort in the wild. Tomorrow more work awaits, but for now, firewood means warmth and hope. You're put on night watch duty, and suddenly the whole wildness feels more intense. The camp fades into shadows, flickering firelight, barely keeping the dark at bay. You sit stiff and alert, ears straining for any sound beyond the crackling flames. Every twig snap or rustle sends your heart racing. You wonder about lurking predators or, worse, hostile humans. Historians still debate how dangerous the nights really were on the frontier. Some say stories were exaggerated, others swear by the real threats. Your imagination fills the silence with eerie shapes. The hours crawl, each minute heavier than the last. Finally, dawn breaks, and you breathe easier. Night watch feels like a test of nerves, endurance, and patience. You realize surviving the Wild West means staying vigilant even when exhausted. And sometimes, just hoping the night passes without incident. You face the dreaded medical duties frontier style. A neighbor trips and slices his leg open on a rusty nail. No fancy hospitals here, just you, a rag, and a bottle of whiskey. You clean the wound as best you can, grimacing at the smell. The injured man grits his teeth, muttering curses about this blasted place. Historians still argue how effective frontier medicine really was. Some swear by herbal remedies. Others say it was mostly luck. You bandage the leg, hoping to avoid infection. The camp watches nervously, every groan a reminder of how fragile life is here. You think about how one simple accident could spiral into disaster, and realize that surviving isn't just about strength, it's about luck, skill, and quick thinking. You vow to be better prepared tomorrow. Today you're tasked with mending clothes, a tedious but vital chore. You sit by the fire needle and thread in hand, fixing ripped shirts and patched pants. The fabric is coarse, worn thin by hard living. Each stitch reminds you how scarce resources really are. Historians still debate how frontier settlers balanced practicality with style. Spoiler fashion was survival first. You quietly repair a torn sleeve while listening to tired voices swap camp gossip. The day drags on, but your work keeps everyone's clothes wearable. You realize survival isn't glamorous, it's slow, repetitive, and often boring. But without these small tasks, chaos would reign. Your hands ache, but the sight of mended clothes brings a small sense of pride. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now, your handiwork holds the camp together. You're assigned watching the horses, and it's surprisingly stressful. Those animals are worth a fortune and trouble to boot. You pace the corral ears, alert for any whinny or rustle. A loose horse could mean disaster, lost supplies, or a runaway wagon. Historians still debate how much settlers relied on horses versus other transport. Whatever the answer, horses are lifelines here. You talk softly to the animals, calming both them and yourself. Suddenly, a stray dog darts through, spooking the herd. You scramble, shouting and waving arms, trying to keep chaos at bay. The horses settle, and you sigh in relief. Being a caretaker in the Wild West is a full-time job because every asset is precious. You glance at the fading sun and hope for a quieter night. You stand at the edge of the camp, watching the sun set behind rugged hills. The day's endless chores weigh heavy on your shoulders. You think about how fragile this life really is, balanced between survival and disaster. Historians still argue whether the Wild West was brutal reality or romanticized myth. Either way, you've learned it's no place for the faint-hearted. As darkness swallows the land, you breathe deeply, feeling the cool night air settle. You know tomorrow will bring the same relentless challenges. But for now, the moment is quiet, peaceful, and fleeting. You close your eyes, thankful for the brief respite, and wonder if you'll ever really make it to sundown again. In the early days of the American frontier, government presence was minimal at best. Territory stretched over vast, untamed lands, often with few officials to enforce laws. Settlers, miners, and outlaws alike moved into these areas, bringing with them a mix of ambition, desperation, and sometimes violence. Territorial governors and local officials were overwhelmed, lacking the manpower and resources to keep order. As a result, lawlessness became the default state, with sheriffs and judges struggling to assert authority. This chaotic environment fostered a culture where personal justice and vigilantism thrived, setting the stage for the infamous Wild West reputation. Historians still argue whether the government's lack of control was due mainly to logistical challenges or a deliberate laissez-faire approach to encourage rapid settlement. As the frontier expanded, the federal government stepped in by appointing U.S. Marshals tasked with enforcing federal laws in these unruly territories. Marshals often found themselves outnumbered and under-equipped, leading them to form posse groups of armed volunteers to pursue criminals or quell disturbances. This system was hit or miss. While it sometimes brought temporary order, it also empowered vigilante groups who could blur the line between justice and lawlessness. The role of marshals became legendary, but their actual effectiveness varied widely depending on local support and the severity of crimes. Historians still debate whether federal law enforcement genuinely improved safety or simply added another layer to the Wild West's chaotic justice system. In many frontier towns where official law enforcement was scarce or ineffective, ordinary citizens formed vigilante groups to protect their communities. These self-appointed enforcers acted swiftly, sometimes brutally, to punish alleged wrongdoers, often without fair trials. While vigilante justice could deter crime temporarily, it also risked escalating violence and punishing the innocent. These groups embodied the tension between the need for order and the dangers of unchecked power. The thin line between justice and mob rule was a constant challenge, shaping the Wild West's violent legacy. Historians still argue about whether vigilante justice was a necessary evil or a dangerous descent into lawlessness. Boom towns sprung up almost overnight during gold rushes and railroad expansions, swelling populations with miners, merchants, and outlaws. To manage this rapid growth and the accompanying spike in crime, many towns established their own quirky and sometimes harsh local laws. These ordinances aimed to keep some semblance of order, but often reflected the townspeople's immediate needs rather than long-term governance. From strict gambling bans to curfews and no firearms rules in certain areas, each boomtown's legal patchwork was as colorful and unpredictable as its residents. Historians still debate how effective these local laws were, or if they mainly served to legitimize certain groups' control. The rapid expansion of railroads across the American West was heavily supported by government land grants and subsidies linking distant towns and enabling faster movement of people and goods. This infrastructure boom also brought a surge in population and economic activity, which in turn led to increased crime and disputes. Governments faced the challenge of extending law enforcement along these new routes and in railroad towns. While railroads facilitated better communication and troop movements, they also attracted outlaw gangs who targeted trains and settlers, complicating the enforcement landscape. Historians still discuss whether government support of railroads inadvertently fueled the Wild West's lawlessness or helped bring eventual order. The U.S. government's ongoing conflicts with Native American tribes dramatically shaped law and order in the Wild West. Military campaigns to subdue or relocate indigenous peoples required a heavy government presence with forts and troops stationed across the frontier. These policies not only impacted Native communities, but also created a militarized environment where settlers lived under constant threat. The government's dual role of managing settler expansion and waging war complicated governance and law enforcement efforts in these contested lands. Historians still debate the ethics and effectiveness of these policies and their long-term consequences for frontier stability. The Homestead Act and other government land grants encouraged settlers to claim and cultivate land across the West. While this spurred rapid population growth, it also led to fierce disputes over land ownership boundaries and water rights. Without strong legal frameworks or enforcement, many disagreements escalated into violent confrontations between neighbors, ranchers, and even entire communities. The government struggled to mediate these conflicts effectively, and land disputes became a common source of instability and lawlessness. Historians still argue about whether these policies helped build America or sowed the seeds of frontier governments, were often riddled with corruption as officials, sheriffs, and judges accepted bribes or turned a blind eye to criminal activities. This corruption undermined efforts to impose law and order, allowing outlaw gangs and unscrupulous businessmen to operate freely. In some cases, corrupt officials colluded with criminals, making it nearly impossible for honest citizens to seek justice. Such corruption contributed significantly to the Wild West's reputation as a lawless, chaotic place where power often trumped justice. Historians still debate the extent to which corruption hindered frontier governance versus being a symptom of broader societal issues. As towns grew larger and wealthier, there was increasing pressure on governments to establish more formal and professional law enforcement agencies. Some frontier towns created police forces with trained officers trying to move beyond the ad hoc sheriff and posse system. These early police departments aimed to impose consistent legal standards, reduce vigilante justice, and provide more reliable protection for residents. However, limited resources and widespread skepticism of authority often hampered these efforts. Historians still debate whether these early police forces effectively curbed violence or simply pushed lawlessness into less governed areas. Federal troops were stationed across the frontier to protect settlers, enforce treaties, and suppress uprisings. While their presence sometimes brought stability, soldiers also occasionally exacerbated tensions by imposing strict controls or engaging in skirmishes with local populations, including Native Americans and settlers. The military's dual role made them both defenders of order and catalysts for conflict, depending on the situation and leadership. Historians still argue over the effectiveness and consequences of the military's role in maintaining law and order in the Wild West. Early Wild West justice often came from informal groups settling scores or protecting communities. But over time, emerging territorial and state governments introduced courts and codified laws. This transition was uneven and met with resistance, as many preferred the swift, sometimes brutal justice of possess and vigilantes. The evolving legal systems aimed to bring fairness and due process, yet skepticism remained high, and enforcement was inconsistent. Historians still debate how quickly and effectively formal justice replaced frontier vigilantism. Frontier newspapers often sensationalized crime stories and public disorder, influencing community pressure on local governments to act decisively. Editors used vivid, sometimes exaggerated accounts to sway public opinion, which could lead to harsher laws or crackdowns. This media spotlight sometimes helped reduce lawlessness by rallying support for officials, but also risked inflaming tensions and encouraging vigilantism. Historians still discuss the media's complex role in shaping frontier justice and governance. When official law enforcement was absent or ineffective, citizens often formed vigilante groups to take the law into their own hands. These committees sometimes operated outside legal boundaries, meting out swift punishments that could include lynching. Governments had a complicated stance. They often tolerated or quietly supported vigilantes as a practical necessity, but also struggled with the legal and ethical implications of such extrajudicial actions. Historians still debate whether vigilante justice helped maintain order or undermine the rule of law. The Wild West saw numerous efforts to curb alcohol consumption and gambling activities, often linked with violence and disorder. Local governments passed prohibition laws and established regulations to control saloons and gambling halls. However, enforcement was spotty, and illegal speakeasies and gambling dens thrived, often protected by corrupt officials. These vice laws sometimes led to more crime as underground economies grew and enforcement clashed with local interests. Historians still argue about whether such regulations reduced vice or fueled greater lawlessness. Government officials often found themselves in the middle of heated land disputes, trying to balance the claims of settlers eager to farm or mine with those of ranchers needing grazing land and Native Americans defending ancestral territories. Policies were inconsistent and enforcement was often weak, leading to violent confrontations and long-standing grudges. The government's interventions sometimes helped resolve conflicts, but also frequently intensified tensions. Historians still debate the effectiveness and fairness of these land policies during westward expansion.